Hello. Good morning and welcome to the Drummergy Podcast for March 11th, 2025. I'm your host, Fred Rockfisher, and today we're going to be talking about being a producer, also mixing music and mastering music and what all that means, and if those topics are relevant or legitimate to owning and operating your own home studio. Okay. So that's what's going to be talked about. But first, of course, if you're a frequent viewer of the show, you know that we go over the silly holidays of the day. I am hearing drums and cymbals reverbing behind me. On the other side of this wall are drums. Where am I hearing that? There's a frequency. I hope that's not translating to the live stream. We're just going to roll with that for now. Things are vibrating in this room. So anyway, today is National Funeral Director Recognition Day. Who knew? Who knew? Maybe the funeral directors know that today's their day. I wouldn't know. I wouldn't know if they knew. Let's see. Today is also National Promposal Day. So I guess this is the day if you're in high school and you're asking somebody to prom, I guess this is when that happens, if I'm interpreting that correctly. The other thing today is National Worship of Tools Day. Okay, worship of tools. I don't know. I don't know about that. Do you love your tools that much you're going to worship them? Maybe so. I don't know. But today's that day, and that's pretty much it for silly holidays. The other controversial thing that seems to rule the internet every 6 months is the daylight savings debacle. It doesn't bother me at all. Spring forward, fall back, it's twice a year. It affects me like not at all. And if you're a person that's out traveling, like a drummer friend of mine is traveling to Nashville today. I don't think that he's complaining about the time difference it's going to be when he gets there. He's on his trip. He's ready to go. And he's going to go do some recording sessions and some songwriting things. But he's traveling to a different time zone. I don't hear anybody complaining about that. If I travel to California, they're an hour behind us. When I get there off the plane, I don't go, oh boy, if it only was the same time it was in Boise. Come on, people, it's twice a year. Everyone throws their arms up and is pretending to be mad about it. Get over it. But if in fact they have to settle on a time that's going to be consistent, I prefer the time that we're in now, which I think maybe somebody can help me out. Is today actually is right now daylight savings time, or what is Mountain Standard Time? I don't know the difference. My point being is that the time that we're in right now, as we go through the summer months, it starts getting dark at 10 o'clock. And I love that here. It's a great hang time on the patio, little fire pit going, really relaxing. I love that when it's still light at that time of day. And then, of course, the sun's coming up around 5:30 in the morning too. I just like the sun. I like the sun. I'm a fan of the sun. So there you go. Anybody else having an issue with daylight savings time? I hope not. But if you are, you can pour out your tears right here in the comments. Let's see. People ask about my legs still. Yes, I'm still trying to figure out how to walk smoothly. I got to tell you, the past week now, it's been difficult to walk. I've had a hard time walking. my leg feels like somebody took a hammer to the inside of my leg from my knee down to my ankle and just tapped all the way up and down. And it's super tender and sore. And I don't know why. Well, I mean, I know why, but it hadn't been feeling like that prior to. And now it's just super, super sore. And so on Friday night, I played with the Cliff Miller Band at the Knitting Factory, opening up for the Young Dubliners, which was a great, fun show to play. But if you've loaded in the Knitting Factory, there's this ramp that goes in the loading dock up about 4 feet or so. And I was waddling my way up the ramp like a penguin. And I got to where I needed to take like 3 or 4 more steps. And I was like trying to figure out, how am I going to make it the rest of the way? And one of the stagehand guys that they had said, do you need help? I was like, I don't know. I got to see if I can figure out how to take these last few steps. And I made it. So, but that was a real challenge, playing a show and having to navigate stairs and ramps and those kind of things. Fortunately, I had Mary there to help me with the drums, and then the Knitting Factory had their stagehands to help. Although when our set was done, they were down to like one stagehand. They sent everybody home. I don't know why. So it was, I felt a little panicked, to be honest with you, getting my stuff off stage and not being able to move very easily. I was able to drum fine, but it's just once I'm up and trying to walk, it's challenging. It's a little embarrassing too, to be honest with you. But yeah, so Midline's taken a few weeks off. It was fun having Anthony Fagiano here last week on the show. We talked for 2 hours. And when we got done, we both felt like it had only been 30 minutes. And Anthony being one of my bestest friends, he and I could just talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. So it was great having him on the show. If you want to go back and watch that, it's on YouTube and my Facebook page. Although I got an email from Facebook, I think it was last week, saying that all previous live videos, or maybe it's all the videos that are on your Facebook page, they're going to start automatically deleting them after 30 days. So we have until, I think, mid-June or so to, if you have content on Facebook that you want to save, you need to download that by the middle of June. Otherwise, it's going to start deleting all of that stuff. I don't know. Maybe their servers or however they store video is, as you can imagine, how many people are on Facebook and all the content that's constantly being uploaded, and where is that being saved to? It's I'm sure it's taking up a lot of space. So anyway, yeah, Midline, we have some new stuff that we are working on, but we're just James is on a trip, and then Anthony's on a trip, and so we'll be back to it soon, and looking for shows to play. That's like our big thing, is to try to get some shows under our belt. Speaking of shows, my wife, the producer, the manager, sometimes we call her the GM, the general manager, her band Casio Dreams, they are playing this coming Sunday. What date is that? So today is the 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th. What day is that? Let's see. Today is Tuesday. It's the 11th. So 12th, Wednesday, 13th, Thursday, 14th, Friday, 15th. The 16th? 16th, I think. At any rate, you can go to Casio Dreams on Facebook or CasioDreams.com and find out when they're playing. They are playing at Heritage for St. Patrick's Day on Sunday. It's an afternoon show. I think it's from 2 to 5, if I remember correctly. And they did this last year, and it was hugely successful. And it's pretty cool for like a Sunday to be able to go and see a concert and have fun and do all of that. And then you still have your whole evening ahead of you. And it makes that easy to transition back to Monday morning. So good stuff. Look up Casio Dreams and go check it out. 80s pop synth music done very, very well. So I made a post a couple days ago about, it was on Sunday, this past Sunday. My son Jude said, "Hey, Dad, I want to play chess." I didn't even know he had been playing chess. Apparently, he's been learning how to play chess at school and wanted to play chess. And I couldn't find our cheaper versions of chess, like in the little cardboard box or anything like that. It must be in our camper trailer. But so I did dig out my old chess set that I had when my dad got it for me, like at an auction, I think when I was 10 or 11 years old, about the same age Jude is now. And it's a marble chess board. And then I have two sets of chess pieces. One is carved uh, marble, and it's kind of I thought at first I thought it was Aztec looking figures, but it turns out they're tiki, like a tiki figure pieces. And then the other set I have is like a lathe marble piece. It's more snooty looking, but the Aztec one is, or excuse me, the tiki set looks really, really cool. I had no idea like if this stuff was of any value, so I started looking online, trying to find it. And when I did, like an incomplete set of those chess pieces can be anywhere from like 40 to 60 bucks. And a complete set that's like in pristine condition can be between like $250, $300 for those pieces. And not that I'm trying to sell it. It was a curious thing that I was looking into as to what its value might be. But Jude and I played 6 games, which I did win all 6. Now I got lucky because as I was playing, I saw that I made some moves that I was regretting, that if he would have seen them, he could have probably beaten me pretty easily. So it was just me not being thorough, but at the same time, it was just for fun. And there were a couple times he got my queen really, really fast, like just me not paying attention, but totally out of practice of playing that game. But I thought it was really cool for him to be learning, because you learn strategy, learning to think ahead in your movements, and cause and effect kind of a thing. And I think playing chess is a good life lesson stuff too. And that's just how it is. Navigating life is choosing our moves. And doing this thing is going to result in a cascade effect of other things. And so I think it's a really important life lesson game too. And it was fun. We've spent 3 hours doing that. Neither one of us staring at a phone or a computer or a TV. And I think it was just good stuff. So there you have it on that. That's your week update. Coffee. Excuse me. Sometimes I get the hiccups when I'm doing this live, and I don't know why. I have no idea why. Speaking of coffee, this coffee that I'm drinking right now is not good. It's a pepper mocha flavored something. And I think when Mary and I were going through the line somewhere, I don't know, at the grocery store or something, they had all this coffee. So we picked like 3, and this was one of them. I think it was called Death Wish coffee, if I remember right. And when I smell it, it seems like something I should be drinking around Christmas time, not as we get close to St. Patrick's Day. So I'll suffer through it. It's not so bad that I just want to spit it out, but it is a weird mix. So probably will never purchase it again. Okay, so into today's topics: producing, being a producer, and being a mastering engineer or mastering music, and if those worlds can exist in the context of what we do here at FM Studios. So you hear me frequently talk about Mrs. Fisher as the producer, and it started out kind of a play on words, and then it became more serious to where she actually is. Yes, she is a music producer. So that kind of got started when, I don't know, around the COVID garbage that was happening. And with Cliff Miller, we were still getting together and rehearsing as often as we felt comfortable to do, which meant we did a lot of live streaming performances right here in this room. And so Cliff and me and Alf and sometimes Michaela, or sometimes just the three of us, we would do these live videos, and I would be playing a djembe and Cliff playing his acoustic and Alf playing his bass, and we could see Mary sitting right in the control room over here, and she would be watching the live, and she would help monitor comments and things as that was happening. And so through that process, we started calling her the producer, and so that became the thing, is to constantly be, so we've been calling her the producer for around 5 years or so. Well, as our studio has evolved and become it's growing legs slowly, we start getting more and more clients, even people that we've never met before come in and want to record. And so what does a producer do? And is that in line with what Mary actually does? So finding the definition. Now, I will say that there are old school ways of thinking, and then there are new school ways of thinking. Now, I know when, now I'm 52 years old. So if you wanted to go back 25, 30 years ago, when I first started getting involved in recording music, you went to a studio, went to an actual building that was dedicated space for a recording studio, and you would work with the recording engineer, and sometimes that recording engineer also did the mixing, and then sometimes they did the mastering. But pretty much back then, if you wanted something mastered, it had to be shipped off, like, to have that done, or taken to another studio somewhere where they specialized in mastering. So what I'm hoping to accomplish today is to clear the air a little bit on, like, what a producer does and what is mastering. And this whole thought of even doing the show today was came into being because I think it was about 2 weeks ago. I'm pretty sure it was 2 weeks ago. I made a reel, a video, a little small, very fast tour of the studio here. So it was coming in through the door, through the hallways, into where the waiting room area is, and showing the production, the studio room, which is where I'm sitting now, where all the drums are, and do most of the recording, and then the control room, and showing that. And I said, this is the home of the Fred Rock School of Drumming. And I also said, it's the home of the Drummergy Podcast. And then I said, it's also FM studios, where we do full audio production, from recording to mixing to mastering. And I said that in that video. Well, it's the internet. And so because it's the internet, you're always going to have, and I have this is episode 117. Every single episode of this podcast that I've done, I always get compliments, and then I always get criticism, no matter what I do or say or what the topic is about. Okay, so and every little thing that I post, because it's on YouTube, it's on TikTok, it's on Facebook, it's on Instagram, and you just get a whole huge audience of people who have their opinions about things. Well, so I did this video and I said full audio production, recording, mixing, and mastering. Well, that raised a few eyebrows among some people. And with that came some criticism of, like, Mary is not a true producer, and Mary is not a true mastering engineer. Like, it's impossible to master your own music, or it's impossible to master music from your home studio. Well, I disagree. And the reason for that is 30 years ago, yes, that probably could have been the case. But as we are sitting here today, right now, in this very moment of 2025, you can see an arc. I see Greg's here. Greg, I'm going to get your comment here in 1 second. Greg is a recording mixer and probably does mastering in his studio as well. I can only assume that that's the case. But as Greg knows, and yes, James, growing pains on the web. Yeah, 100%. Uh, right now, as we sit, we have tools available to us that are pretty affordable and pretty easy to use. So, what do you need to be successful in any job that you do? You need to have knowledge, tools, and the skill to use that knowledge and skills. That's what you need. The knowledge, tools, and the skills to put those two together. And then, as time goes on, the results should continue to get better and better and better, and you learn how to use those tools. And we have the University of YouTube available to us all the time, with people creating videos on how to use those tools and how to expand your knowledge and how to get around certain things. So yes, there are people who have recording studios within their home, which is what I have. And then there's other people that say they have recording studios, but their recording studio is their kitchen table, and that's what they're referring to as their kitchen table. Now, nothing against that group of people at all, because it's pretty phenomenal what you can accomplish producing and creating and releasing music from your own home. It's pretty impressive that we have these tools to be able to do that. So let me see what let's see. Let's put Greg's comment right up here. Greg says, to be technical, a producer just makes sure the projects get accomplished, sound good, and will meet the expectations of the client. Then ensure the best possible performance from the artist and make sure the recordist is on point. Yep. I have a little bit more to add to that, but in a nutshell, that's exactly correct what Greg just said. Thank you for that, Greg. So what rubbed me the wrong way what rubbed me the wrong way was the dismissive. Now look, I got a handful of comments that get emailed to me, or people will message me, or you hear through the grapevine, because we have a pretty close network of musicians and friends here in the Treasure Valley, and acquaintances. And so news can travel fast once you start hearing things. So what I didn't like was knowing how much time and effort my wife, Mary, has put into learning this craft, and then hearing the results of it and thinking, wow, that is pretty good stuff. And not only that, getting feedback from people that we trust, who have really great names in the music business, in the music industry, from top-notch musicians, other recording engineers, and the like. And so getting that kind of feedback from those people has been really great and really encouraging. What bothered me was the dismissive attitude towards her, on like, without really even understanding or knowing what she's done, or even listen to anything that she's done. And just that lack of awareness, or even being able to have some credibility towards her as a producer, that really rubbed me the wrong way. And so I'm on here and I'm laughing, but when I hear that stuff, it really did bother me. And I was like, okay, these people just don't really understand what's happening. And so I wanted to try to and it's not just to not to defend her necessarily, but just make people aware, like, what does a producer do? So as Greg said in his comment, he's really right on track with that. So I watched the David Foster documentary. I think that's on Netflix, if it's still on there. And David Foster said for him, producing came down to matching great artists with great songs and getting them together. Now, of course, he went far beyond that, working with Celine Dion and working with why can't I think of her name? So silly, I can't think of her name right now. It'll come to me. Dang it. Celine Dion and, those kind of people. Whitney Houston, that's who I was thinking of. So what does a producer do? A producer will organize and oversee the recording process, and that's more or less what Greg just said. Um, Sometimes being a producer is finding musicians. We've had a handful of people come here to record who they maybe play piano and sing, or they play guitar and sing, but they don't have a band. And so we'll assemble a band to make that happen. A lot of time, we'll play drums. I've got a handful of bass players that I really like to work with, and so I'll choose one of them or see what their availability is. I have some guitar players that are really great. So I have musicians that I know really well that I can suggest to play on this person's song. And so it's finding musicians. The other is, a lot of times we have a pre-planning meeting, a pre-production meeting on what their goals are, so that we're not absorbing that time when we actually should be recording it. So we want to understand what the artist's vision is and help that come to be. Just Greg made that point as well. Greg, I'm glad you're here, that you can weigh in, because this is really good stuff. So listening to and understanding what the artist's vision is and helping that come to be, help that vision be realized. The other thing is helping with the creative process. When people are in here, like Mary's a vocalist, and she can be really great help with a singer. And sometimes when singers aren't used to being in the recording studio, they get a little nervous. And so that nervousness starts to come through in their performance. And Mary will sit there right on the other side of the glass, and she's very calm with them. And she goes, "That's a good start. Let's do another one." And she'll keep working with them, and they become really at ease with what they're doing. And so Mary is helping them feel comfortable and helping them pull a performance out that they need. And so when she's doing that, she's really being calming for the artist to be able to perform at their maximum level. And if they're singing a little out of key, Mary will sing right back to them. Okay, on this note, it's and she'll do whatever. So she helps guide them along through that process. So it's really, really cool to watch this happening. So Mary is producing as we're recording. She's making that happen. So is Mary a producer? Yes. The answer is yes. It's really cool to watch this happen. The other part is help direct in songwriting. In midline, well, I got to step back a little bit from midline a little bit. So there was a point in my history with midline, if you watched last week's episode, where I was out of the band for about 2 years. And during that time, I was playing with another band, and we went to LA to record. And then that's when the idea of playing to the click was presented to me in a way that if I didn't learn that skill, I was really going to struggle being a working drummer. Okay. And I've told that story many, many times. Also, I was working with an engineer and producer, and his name was Mark Palladino. Now, Mark, so this is mid 1990s, so 96-ish. Yeah, 96. So go to LA. Now, this is shortly after the LA riots. And the studio that we were recording in was in Compton, which I think was kind of the epicenter of the LA riots. And so there was still a lot of tension in the air being in that, especially being in Compton. And so Mark Palladino had a lot of ties and had done a lot of work with these rap artists from, I think, was it Death Row, which had Tupac Shakur and Snoop Dogg and those kind of artists. And seeing some of that behind the scenes stuff was really eye-opening for starters. But Mark Palladino's best friend, who he worked with very closely, was Bernie Taupin, and Bernie Taupin was the writing partner for Elton John. So when Mark started producing the band, it really bruised my ego, because we had written these songs, and the songs were the songs, and we were going to record these songs and play these songs how they were. Well, once we got into the recording studio, Mark's saying, we're going to take this section of the song and we're going to cut it out completely. It doesn't belong there. It's useless. It doesn't need to be there. And I thought, well, how dare you take my baby and cut this part of my baby out and get rid of it? Or to take this section and swap them around, like rearrange the songs. Now, in the moment that was happening, inside I was dying, because I thought, oh, he's ruining our songs. Well, once I got to step away from that a little bit and hear it objectively, I went, he's absolutely right, that this song is way better with this part or without this part, and so on. So that was my first exposure really to being produced, somebody producing me, somebody telling me what to do. How dare they? I'm Fred Fisher. Who could tell me what to do? So it was a great learning experience and very eye-opening. And so when I came back to Midline and we were writing songs, I became very, very heavy-handed in song arrangement. And not that the other guys in the band were incapable of doing so, but just because of the experience I had had and with the people I had had those experiences with, there was a lot of trust there. Like, well, Fred's already been through this, and so we're going to kind of follow his lead. And then that third album that we put out, called In for a Quick Garden, we recorded that with Scott Pergandy, and it was really high level recording experience. Everything was going great. And then once Scott had a pretty good handle on the mix, then Scott Elliott and I went in to do some of the final tweaks. And Scott Elliott and I both ended up producing that album and making some tweaks in the mix. There were certain songs where we completely cut out a section that we realized later, hey, this doesn't belong here. And so if you look at that album credits, it says produced by Elliott Fisher. Elliott being Scott's last name, and Fisher, of course, being my last name. And then Elliott Fisher ended up being the name of our number 2 son. So I've always liked that name, Elliott Fisher. But anyway, so back to being a producer is helping pull a great performance out of somebody, helping people with the composition of the song, the songwriting process, sometimes the arrangement of the song. Sometimes somebody can come in with a song that's really great, but it just doesn't have, something's not moving with it. And that could be just adjusting the tempo of the song by 1 or 2 dB will make the song feel better. So maybe you want to pull it back 1 beat per minute or possibly 2. And so that can have a lot to do with the feel of the song. And so when sometimes that's something that comes up, but it's all in all, you want to pull the best performance out of those artists, out of those people, so that they have this really great song in the end. And so that is what music producing is. And that falls in line with how things are going right now. Catching up on some comments here. Greg says, you guys do great work over there. People don't know what they know. The worst part is that they don't know it. Yeah. Let's see. Jeff Poole responding to Greg. Greg, in addition, a producer also brings simple ideas to fruition, thinking through arrangements, instrumentation, and more importantly, when to say no to an idea. A great producer never wavers from the vision of the artist. Jeff Poole, I agree 100%. And you bring it up to the point of saying no sometimes to certain ideas. That's really, really important too, because it's all in all, you got this vision of the artist that wants a song to turn out a certain way. And when sometimes they want to have too much instrumentation in a song, they keep adding spices to the soup. And before long, you don't taste the soup anymore. You just taste a big pile of spices and it ruins it. So yeah, when to say no. Jeff, that's an excellent point. Thank you for that. Very, very good. Let's put up James's comment. James Harrison says, I'm sure it's difficult to not take it personally. Most people that complain or disagree with your posts come from their own opinions and backgrounds. If UFM Studios is growing and having happy, satisfied clients, that's what matters. Yes, sir. Thank you. Yeah. You know, it's a weird line to walk, you know, being a drummer. Being drummer's hard enough, right? You know, my wife being heavily involved with music too, I think that our relationship is a special one. Not very many people get to experience both spouses being so heavily involved with music, and those that do that's just a really special thing. And I'm not at any way criticizing somebody who doesn't have that partner to have those same kind of goals. But I think all I can do is relate it to my own experience, and it's really awesome to have my partner in crime here, my business partner, my wife, all of that, the producer. So yeah, and going well. Let me finish these comments here. Sorry about that, people. Chris McCall said, I was so nervous and she was awesome at getting the best out of me. Yeah, so Chris had to record some video drumming to some worship songs to audition to play at his new church, which they have auditions for. And so we worked on making sure that those songs were good to go. And then we recorded Chris here with video and produced that and put it together so that he would have a really great sounding and looking audition material. And it's part of what I stress too when I'm teaching drum lessons is to drummers who are becoming working drummers and they're out doing shows or they're playing at their churches or they're wherever they're going, is to be as professional as they possibly can be. Even my students who are in high school who are in marching band or playing in their jazz band or whatever the case is that they are presenting themselves not only as a really great musician, but as a really great person to be around. Like, what are they bringing to the table to help elevate everything to be better? And I do stress that quite heavily. Greg says, absolutely. The producer is in the artist corner. Hope you are having an awesome morning. I am, Greg. Blue Flashes is here. Good morning, Mr. Coffee. Good morning to you. Blue Flashes, I don't know if you got the earlier portion, but I am drinking a terrible cup of coffee today. It's a peppermint mocha, and it's just, I'll just go ahead and say it. It's awful, but not awful enough to make me stop drinking it. Greg says, having a producer flip your songs and arrangement can be fairly disturbing the first time it happens. Yes. And I definitely experienced that for sure. So as we kind of drift from producer role to home recording studio to being a recording engineer and then becoming a mix engineer and then a mastering engineer, is the tools available to us to be able to do so. So going back to my experiences going to LA to record. So I started going to LA to record in 1996. And then I kept returning to LA multiple times to record on different projects. One was the X Drive project. If anybody remembers that, that's been probably 12 years ago or so now when that started. And then I've been there, a handful of times since then recording. And I recorded in some pretty big studios, and I also recorded in studios that were in smaller spaces like what I have. And I think the trend to be able to record at home, again, the knowledge, tools, skills, the affordability of this equipment, and you don't have to have a gazillion tons of outboard gear. A lot of this stuff is just software now, plugins and things, and it's pretty remarkable what technology has allowed us to do. But you still have to have these really great ears to be able to do that. So, I all over LA and the surrounding areas and going to different studios, showing at somebody's house in a neighborhood, just like what I live in, and going, well, who's here? And the people that hired me are taking me back to a little studio in somebody's backyard in a big shed. And there's Andy Johns. And Andy and Glenn Johns, who recorded all this Led Zeppelin stuff. There's Andy Johns sitting there in a studio about the same size as what I have right now, and putting out this great music from huge, well-known national touring artists that record right in those small areas. So that was kind of like the catalyst or the inspiration to be able to build what I currently have, was based off of going, oh, you mean you can do this from home? It's important for drums, okay? Drums specifically, having a really great dedicated space to record drums is really, really important. And getting great source tones. And my buddy Greg in here has weighed in on this before, is like, when you're capturing sound recording, if what you're capturing already sounds really good, then that makes the mixing process so much easier, because you have to do less treatment to things to make it work, to put your mix together. We've been doing this for years now, recording. And so when we first started doing recording, we did like some collaboration covers with people. Hold on. My friend Jared Anthony is here. Jared says, I didn't fully understand the overall function of a producer when I first started recording in studios. FM studios has been a great place for me to learn and grow. And now that I look back, it's amazing to me how quickly Mary has achieved her level of expertise. I love and look forward to every bit of time I spend there. Boise has some great producer talent for sure. Jared, I'm going to put your comment up there for everybody to see again. Thank you for that. Yeah. It's fun. It's fun to have this happening here. It's fun to have people like Jared come over, and Jared wants to do stuff, and Mary's right there to help him get the best performance that he can, and do some video and put that out there. So going back to what I was saying earlier, was when we started recording, we were doing collaboration covers with people, which we still would like to do more of that, because it's really, really fun to do that. But so take the song Woman in Chains, for example, by Tears for Fears. That was one that we did that was super, super cool. It's got a lot of cool drum parts in it. Some of them are programmed drum parts. And then the actual drum parts were played by Phil Collins. And of course, you've got Roland and Kurt, and then whoever the bass player was. I'll probably say the wrong name, but something Padino, or I don't know. I can't remember. At any rate, so it was me, Mary, Jake Reynolds sang the guy part. Scott Alexander from Dishwalla played bass. James Lancaster played guitar. And so we recreated this song and did video to it. Now, the cool thing about recording is, can you make that, what we did, sound as good or close to the Tears for Fears recording, which I think Bob Clearmountain was the one who mixed that song. And so when we first started recording, we're doing these, oh boy, Anthony says Mary and I. Back to the grammar police. So you record these songs, and then you're A/Bing between what the original artist did and what you're doing, and trying to, and you're learning from that, like, oh, what reverbs am I using? What delays am I using? How are things placed in the stereo field? Where's the guitar and the drums and the bass and all of that relative? And then like some of the percussion type stuff that was happening in there, the little keyboard things that Mary programmed to put in. So now you're trying to A/B these recording processes and getting really, really close to where sometimes you're listening, it's like, which version am I listening to? And that's pretty impressive that you can to be able to do that. Greg, the hardest thing for me over the years was to separate each part of the process and streamline. Audio school helped me delineate each of the process and taught me to focus on each stage appropriately. It is important not to wear all the hats at once. Producers produce, recordists capture and edit, mixers mix, etc. Yeah, there's probably some of those lines do get blurred, like wearing the producer hat and the recording engineer hat at the same time. But sometimes that's the way it's working. That's the way it's going. So, like I mentioned a few minutes ago, we have the university YouTube at our fingertips, and we use Studio One, which is now Studio One Pro 7, I believe, is the version that we're on currently. But there are videos by Studio One or people who use Studio One out there that teach you how to use their tools, which their tools, some of them can be the same or close to what Pro Tools uses, or whatever the other DAWs are, which I'm blanking at the moment. But they all work in a similar manner. I'm sure there's some differences here and there, but like I said, it all comes down to the ears too. So you have all of this. We have all of this information available to us to achieve what we're after. So let's mixing and mastering. So what is that? What is that? Again, I just want to reiterate that we are living in 2025, and we have knowledge, tools, and skills and videos and all of this stuff available to us. Now, going back 25, 30 years ago, if you wanted to have your music master, well, first of all, what is mastering? Mastering is taking your final mix and then sending it off to a mastering engineer, and they are going to maybe add compression. They're going to do a little bit of EQ thing, but they're doing it across the final stereo mix that you send them. They're not in mixing the music anymore. And add some sparkle, add some punch, making sure things are loud enough to meet like industry standards for being played on the radio. And then the master becomes a physical master that all the copies are made from. The gold master, I believe, is what it's called. So going back to Midline's third record, when Scott Pergandy mixed that for us, he took it to Nashville because he was going to Nashville for some other things. And while he was in Nashville, he took it to an actual mastering engineer to have that album mastered. Those guys have specialized rooms for acoustics, and they have special speakers, and they have a special way of listening things that they are going to make this crystal clear mastered song. And then I don't think we received it until after the printing was done, but they took this gold master CD, The Master, which all copies were made from, and then that was sent off to I believe it was disc makers at the time to print us our CDs, which I think we pressed 1,000 of those to start. And then that was what we got our record deal with that product. And then of course, then the record company pressed more CDs from that master. So that was the master. Now, these DAWs, what is a DAW? The digital audio workstation. A lot of DAWs have within them programs to master your music, or you can buy plugins to help master your music. Now you don't necessarily need to have a specialized room to do that in. And the reason for that is that these computer programs have a way of analyzing your mix and to let you know what may or be or may not be wrong with your mix, or where you might need to make adjustments. And then a lot of these software programs also tell you what the requirements are for your master to be on, say, Spotify and Apple Music and the streaming platforms, for YouTube Music and all of these different things. It'll show you what the criteria is for your loudness to be at. So that's where now some people will say, well, mastering, is just taking and putting effects on the final mix bus and that's mastering. Well, maybe, but not like officially. Like mastering is taking the stereo mix and making adjustments to that so it's loud enough for radio and it's loud enough for these other platforms. Now, the other thing is if you have a whole body of work, let's say you recorded a whole album and you got 10 songs on this record, and you got this mix and this mix and this mix and this mix, and all these mixes might fluctuate in volume. And so you want to make sure that so going back to the CD days or vinyl or cassette tapes or whatever you're listening to, is that you listen to the first track and then the second track comes on and it's blaringly loud or it's really, really quiet. So you don't have to, as the listener, keep writing the volume knob for this song and that song and this song and that song and going back and forth, that it's a completed body of work. And so, yes, can you master from home? Absolutely. Now, as I started to feel brave enough, I guess, to talk about this subject, is I did watch some videos because I didn't want to be misspoken about how I felt about all of this stuff. So one thing that I saw in a lot of videos from mastering engineers that I watched their videos on YouTube is not that you couldn't master your own music, but the benefit of having somebody else master your music is that it's a completely different set of ears. It's a completely different person being objectionable to your music, and that you get feedback. So you can learn what you might need to change to make your mixes better. And because sometimes mastering reveals certain things about your mix that you went, whoa, I had no idea that was happening. So yeah, we've had a handful of things that we've had mixed right here in the studio and then sent off to mastering. And then that comes back and you go, oh, that sounds pretty good. But then you think, oh, it revealed this kind of muddy part of the mix, and things like that. And so then you make those adjustments. Now I don't personally sit and mix or anything. I would like to. I don't have time to do it. But like I've said before, I created a job for Mary. So I just let her, rule that world. And she does great at that. So when as we go through this process and learn more and more about it and get better and better and better and better, there are these industry people that can give us feedback that we have access to. And Mary will send these mixes off or these masters off to somebody and say, okay, what do you think? And they'll come back and say, great. Or they might come back with very, very specific things, like frequency specific things. Okay, the bass needs a boost in this certain frequency, and that's it. Or more or less reverb on the snare or whatever. These handful of people that Mary will rely on feedback from her mixes will give her very specific, detailed critique of those mixes. And as you go along and go along and go along, then Mary has developed more and more confidence in what she's doing and how to achieve these things that we want to hear and putting out pretty good stuff. Well, how does that relate to what Midline does? For Midline, we have this really extremely high bar of what we want to hear, and our band sonically wants to compete with the current bands who are out there in our same genre, and we want there to be no difference in sonic quality of those things. And we're not at a point here yet to be able to do so. Now, I will say there is no other studio in town who's capable of achieving that for us either. And so that's why it goes off to somebody else. But we are recording all of that stuff and then sending that off. And so we've been using Chris Collier to mix and master the midline stuff for us. And he's somebody that I worked with a lot in LA. I've done a lot of recording sessions with him as the engineer. He is also a drummer. And so when I've recorded with Chris and I'm drumming and he's a drummer and he's on the other side of the glass, he can give me immediate feedback like, hey, when we go to the chorus this time, do this kind of a fill, or hit that cymbal and not that cymbal. He gives me really detailed stuff back. It's really awesome to work with him. And he is somebody who can give us the product that we want that's sonically going to match what these A-list other rock bands are doing and being played on the radio. So when you hear Midline's mixes on the radio, there's no difference in it, sonic quality. You don't listen to it, go, oh, that's like a really cool local recording. Yeah, there's nobody within a couple 100 miles that can give us that kind of quality that we're after. So that is why we do that. So it's not something on Mary. It's just there's nobody here capable of doing that. And that's not a cut either on other recording studios that are in town. And there's the bigger studios that everybody's aware of. And then there's a bunch of people that have places like I do that, there's guys out there I don't even know that exist probably who are doing great things. Let's see what Greg's, let's catch up here. Mary's talking to Greg saying, Greg and you have your right brain, left brain tasks too. I think that was an incomplete sentence, but I think I understand. Greg says another piece of mastering is mastering for format. Yeah, vinyl requires a different master from cassettes, from CD. Radio masters also have to be different due to the ridiculous amount of broadcasts compression the stations employ to make their station louder than the others. Yep, 100%. And that's like I was saying, Greg, is that within these DAW programs in the mastering section, a lot of times it'll list on the side of the screen like these are the points that you want to hit. If you want your stuff to sound good on these different things, these different platforms, you need to meet these certain specifications. And I think that's what you're saying there. And yeah, you're 100% right. When, back before we had these in our hands and we're listening to music on these and earbuds and little tiny devices and computer speakers, people had big home stereo systems. That's how you listen to music, or big boom boxes in your room, like I had when I was growing up. Back when stereo systems were furniture, like your TV was part of furniture, right? And so that's how we were listening to music then, or in your car and listening to the radio. And then things got smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. So you're trying to make your music sound great on the computer, in your little earbuds, and on your big systems, and on the radio, and all of these things. And so can you master music? Yes, absolutely. You can master your own music. And so like I said when I first started, is no matter what I do or say, there's going to be somebody out there who's going to be completely contrary to any of it, and that's okay. But when it came to the dismissive attitude towards my wife, that's when like the husband part of me kind of kicks in and says, hey, you're wrong. I know what my wife goes through, and I know what her skills are, and I know what her passion is, and her desire to create the best product that we can coming out of FM studios. So to the naysayers, I guess if you're going to be a naysayer, then I guess you're a naysayer. So there you go. It's got to let it go, I guess, if I could try to let it go. It'd be easier to let go if I wasn't drinking crappy peppermint mocha coffee. So that's what I wanted to cover for today. Next week, I will be having. Greg says I make jokes about it, but Ozone mastering software is lovely. Yeah, I'm not sure if we're still using Ozone. Um, Maybe. Well, to before I forget is when you do these mastering things, Greg will know what I'm talking about. But like if you had a song, well, going back to like the Women in Chains recreation that we did in the mastering program, it'll show you this like kind of a 3D image. It'll like the one that's closer shows like what the original is, and then the one that we did is behind it, and you will see different things where different frequencies poke out in the mix uh, in relationship to the original one. And so then you can kind of carve and adjust your EQ to match that. And sometimes gets a little bit more involved where you maybe have to go back and remix some couple little things, but it's a really cool way to show you how close you got when you get down to the mastering process with those graphs, I guess, if you want to call it that. But it's a good way of analyzing it. Now, we've tried using the AI mastering programs before, and it kind of gets close, but it's like, it's not there yet. That's where it's like you got to use your ears to make sure that those things are translating correctly. And the other thing is like mixing and mastering, you get used to hearing things a certain way in your room that you're working in. And that's why you always do the car test. You take that mix out to the car, and then you kind of get used to knowing where your different frequencies need to be in relationship to your room, that if it sounds a certain way in your mix room, that you can be confident like, oh, once this is in the car, that all sounds like it's supposed to be. I even joked with Mary, I said we should build a mixing room inside of a Honda Odyssey because that's the car we drive. It's like those speakers sitting in a car, that's our mix room. Like then you didn't have to do the car test, right? You're just mixing inside the car. I'm like, let's go to Jalopy Jungle. We'll get a Honda Odyssey with no wheels and everything, and we'll build a room around that. That'll be our mixing room. Greg says I started using Aventone mix cubes, and that has all but eliminated the need for a car test. Oh, cool. I'll have Mrs. F check out whatever that is. Nice. Oh, Mary just face palmed. I think that's a face palm. I don't have my glasses on. Next week, I will have my awesome friend and musician here, bass player for Dishwalla, Scott Alexander, is going to join me next week. And that's going to be really, really cool. I think that Dishwalla is getting ready to do some stuff this coming year with touring and things like that. And Scott also plays bass with Marcy Playground. So that's going to be a great hang. Looking forward to that. So make sure you tune in. If you're still here, which I appreciate, and you're watching on Facebook, great. If you're watching on YouTube, even better. I once a week I get these analytics that come from YouTube that kind of give me like a feedback on how my channel's doing, and I get a lot of people watching. But it was my thing that I got yesterday on my weekly update from YouTube is that 89% of the people watching my content on YouTube are not subscribed to my channel. So if y'all could help me out and just simply go boop, subscribe, it's that easy. It's that easy. Okay, I had really it does help. So yeah, next week Scott Alexander is going to be here. Going to be fun. We'll talk to him and see what's going on in his world. And I started putting this list of people I wanted to have on the show, and it was amazing how many of the people that I want to have on the show are bass players. And I think that's just maybe just that having that relationship between drums and bass is so important. It seems like I just want to hug and squeeze all my bass player friends. All right, thanks for hanging out. Speaking of having clients, we have one showing up here in about 20 minutes to do some vocal stuff. So cool things going on here at FM Studios, and appreciate you hanging out. Greg, James, great comments. Chris, appreciate you guys hanging out. All right, and we'll talk to you next week. If I can hit this button correctly. All right, we'll see you. Maybe.